You're watching Forget Being Cool.
Let me tell you something, Dave. When you're not at your full health capacity, you can't shoot out the white stuff as far, and you can only poke a little in front of you in the original Legend of Zelda.
It's time for the button discussion.
Let's talk about this, John.
Dave.
I hate this game. This is the original Legend of Zelda. I'm not a fan. I don't get it. It seems like this is how they should have taught me how graph paper works in in elementary school, because this would have been way more fun to learn how maps work if I would have.
Okay, but here's the thing, right? And this is why I said that it holds up great for those who played it before, but it doesn't necessarily hold up for people who haven't. And don't get me wrong, there are people that have never played this game before. You'll go back and play it for the very first time right now and could possibly love it.
But isn't that if they use an online map or something, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose? It's not the same. I've seen people who do this, and they'll boot it up and they'll use some sort of guide or way to lead them, and that's not the point of this game at all. I feel like this game is designed around the idea of saying, figure it out on your own, and that's kind of the point. You're supposed to create your own adventure, and half of the game is not even playing the game itself, in my mind.
So it depends, right? I would say there's no wrong way to do it, especially now in 2018, right? There's no wrong way to play this game. The dungeons have always been what I've loved about the Zelda series. These different dungeons, and you have different things you need to go through the dungeons, and you get rewards from the dungeons, and a little bit less in this one than in later iterations, where every dungeon comes with an item that you need to help you get to the next dungeon, right? In Twilight Princess and I'm sure Wind Waker and whatever else, right? In Skyward Sword, you have to have the grapple hook to get to this area where the dungeon is. So it kind of blocks you from getting to that dungeon until you get the grapple, which you'll get from another dungeon.
Okay.
But it's the dungeons though. Just to give you the point I was going. So it's the dungeons that I think are so great, right? So if that's what you're going in for, using the map to help you figure out how to go, okay, this is where the first dungeon is, have to go to it. Here's where the second one is. Here's how you get to it. Doing that, I don't think is a problem.
So I've gotten to the dungeon.
The first one?
Yeah, never solved the dungeon. This is how I'm so awful at this game, John.
Okay. The first dungeon is not hard though. It's not. There's no mystery to it. There's no puzzle you have to solve.
Well, then maybe I'm walking into the wrong dungeon.
Maybe did you go across a big long bridge to a little tiny island looking thing with a dungeon in it?
No, I went the other way.
What do you mean the other way? Where'd you end up?
I went to the right.
And you found a dungeon?
I found a dungeon.
All the way to the right?
That's
the first
right
dungeon.
And then exploring, but my understanding of this is going in blind. Because this is a game I've gone in blind to, although every game I go into blind.
But see, that's the thing is, there are dungeons you cannot go to until you go to certain ones. I want to say maybe the third or the fourth one, you have to do the dungeon before to get to it, because you get the raft, and to get to the other dungeon, you have to take the raft, right? So there are ones you have to do in order. It is set up so there are some you can do out of order. But your odds of surviving long enough to get to them is less, because as you beat the dungeons, you get more hearts.
Well, see, that was me banging my head around going, how do I get past this thing when I have 3 hearts? I don't know. Maybe I'm supposed to do this. So I kind of just stuck my way around, hit things that I could, and made it what I'm assuming is pretty far into the map, although I never looked at the full map.
So something that you and I have talked about doing, and what we need to do, and I really want to make this video at some point, is you trying
to walk me through it.
Yes.
Which I think would be a way more enjoyable experience than trying to go into this game blind, not knowing what you're doing, because we talk about Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is a thing now that it seems like it pulls from this idea, except the fact that there is some sort of guidance when you start. In this, you start the game up, and nothing says anything. You go into that cave because you're a smart gamer, and you know that when you boot up and there's a cave right there, you go in, you get the sword. After that, I have no guidance. I have no idea. I have nowhere to go. I just go, well, there's a path to the right, there's a path upward, and there's a path to the left. So I'm going to go to the right. I don't know why.
So, yes, right? And part of that is, these games needed to take a while. And this is one of the few games, like, back in that time period where, one, they had saves, right? A lot of games didn't have saves back then. But you could save your game. It's also a game where it's not like how far can you get, and the difficulty is every time getting slightly farther. Like Mario, it's every time you played it, you hopefully in theory get a little bit further in the game, until you could go all the way through the game in one go. And a full run of Super Mario Brothers is 20 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever, like some relatively short amount of time. Whereas like Zelda, like Legend of Zelda, like you progressed. Like every time you played it, you were right back where you ended, right? So when you die and you hit continue, you go back to the first spot, but you have all your stuff. Right. And then you're just, let's go a little further. Let's go a little further. Let's go a little further in the game, right? But it does. It gives you that freedom to go wherever you want. But there is guidance. There is guidance in a few spots.
That's the problem is I just don't know where to start. And I guess like maybe in time, as you keep going and you start figuring out stuff, maybe you get to a point where you kind of understand the pattern of what you're supposed to be doing. But because you get a sword and it doesn't even point me in a direction, it would almost be nice, and this is the way I would have designed this game, is if you went into that cave, got the thing, right? And then you only had one other way to go. And then from there, that expanded out to being able to go multiple directions, which may have felt less of an adventure, and some people would argue that that's not the point of this game. But if it would have guided me to the first dungeon instead of me probably going to maybe the second dungeon, I feel like I would have understood what I was doing better.
So they did, in a way, and I'm thinking back on this because I haven't played all the way through the game in a long time. The last time I played really far was on the NES Classic, and I had some issues. I think we talked about this before. There's like just that little bit of lag, and it gave me some problems with some of the enemies because of that. Just that split second of lag was hindering me.
Right.
And so when I did it on there, I was using a map, an online map. I was just looking at it because I just wanted to go hit up all these dungeons again. I'm playing through it again now on the Switch, and I'm not using the dungeons. Like I'm not using a map at all. I'm going in blind. I actually need to get back in. I haven't played it in a little bit, but I'm just going in blind and just going, right? So what I've realized though is that they don't guide you in the way of here's a direction, here's a map, here's a whatever, right? But what they do is as you get into certain areas, the number and difficulty of the enemies in that sector become more difficult, right?
Yeah.
So if you go to an area, if you're very beginning, right, and you have just a sword and a few hearts, and you go into an area and there's just like a swarm of horsemen with swords, it's going to kill you quick, right? No matter how good you are, well, odds are no matter how good you are, it's going to kill you quick. And you go again, you try again, you realize, I don't want to fight these guys anymore. I'm going to go this way. Oh, this one here just has a couple slow-moving guys that shoot stuff. And I would tell you the name of them all because, of course, I'm wearing my Zelda shirt that has all the enemies on it.
But you don't remember them
I would have to
reading them.
Oh, God. No, the names of these enemies are insane, right? But you go through, and so it kind of guides you by the difficulty of the area. So if you go up, right, so you get your sword, you go up to the one above it, there's 4 or 5 guys, they're slow moving, you have a shield, right? Yeah. So you could literally, if someone shoots something at you, you can just stand there as long as you're not also attacking. You can take those guys down easy. You're like, oh, I'll go to this place first. And you go over to the right one, you're like, oh, well, it's a few more guys, but they're basically the same. And you can actually follow the
that's how you taught games in this era.
Yeah, you follow the easy, I say the easy path, but you follow the doable path and you stay away from the not yet doable path and you can go through. So it does guide you to some extent.
See,
like
this is
with
my
that.
urge. This is my urge to explore that's leading me the wrong direction. Just being curious of what else is out there, and me going, well, I can go this way and beat these couple little guys. That's fine, and I can get here. Oh, I died because I suck. And then so, what's the other direction? I'm gonna go the other way.
Yeah, and you have to do that to some extent. But so did you run into any of the guys that like give you some guidance? Like there's a guy who's like, go up this waterfall, and there's something up there that you're gonna want,
No,
right? And there's another.
I'm terrible, John.
I mean, that's you have to go through a couple hard squares to get to that guy. There's another guy you run into eventually, who says, what is it? Oh, he tells you to go check out the graveyard.
Okay.
There's another guy. So there is a place on the map. Look at it on the map is just one square. But if you walk into that spot and you just keep going up or you keep going left, and I think if you keep going down, you will see the same spot over and over and over again. If you walk to the right, you'll exit it. But it's a square on the map that you have to go through to get to the far left side, and you have to go out it in a certain order to be able to actually come out the other side.
So kind of like the forest in Ocarina of Time.
Yes. Is that the one? Yeah. Like, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Very similar to that. But there's a guy you run into who will tell you the directions. He'll give you cardinal directions on which way to go. And I think I have that written down somewhere now because I don't want to forget it now that I've seen it.
Tell me about the first time you played this game, John.
So back in probably 88, 89, something like that. I don't remember exactly. It was the NES had been out for a little while. The Nintendo had been out for a while because screw anyone who calls it the NES. It's a freaking Nintendo.
Entertainment
system. Yeah, there's my hot take. Yeah, but back in the day when it came out, everyone just called it a Nintendo. Now, I don't know. Maybe other people in other areas call it NES, but why? It's a Nintendo. And you have the Nintendo, and then you have the Super Nintendo. And then you have the Nintendo 64 or the N64. Any other way you pronounce it, it's wrong.
The N64 had the name N64 on the box.
Yes.
Yes.
I agreed. But, so, we got it when I was pretty young. We got that. So we had Legend of Zelda, and we had Legend of Zelda and Mario. So like Super Mario Brothers, the original. And we could borrow some games from my grandparents because they had a couple games at the time. And the very first game I ever beat, I think we talked about in the last one, Super Mario Brothers. The second game I ever beat was The Legend of Zelda. Now, I was definitely less than 10 years old, so maybe 8 or 9. I haven't had this conversation with my stepdad in a long time. I have a feeling he might have either helped draw out a map that helped me get places because he had beat it before I did.
You told this story about how somebody drew a map. I think and you had a map that like you were both collectively working on, or he was working on it because he was trying to beat it. So you had a map that was like actual graph paper on a table, which is how I feel you need to play this game. Like I feel like that's the only way to play it, which sounds like a whole nother game.
It's definitely the smart way to play it, right? I also think you're mixing up my story with someone else's.
Okay.
Because I think I've heard that story. Yeah, I've heard that story, and I remember that story, and I think my stepdad did help, but I think a lot of his was more memory, because he would be the guy that I'd be playing through, and he'd be like, okay, there's a bush in this area, you got to go burn that bush. And you burn that bush, and it's a secret passageway or something like that. Or and I don't know, like, here's what's so weird. As I'm trying to remember now, like now that I have the flame in the game that I'm playing, right? I have the flame. I can go around burning bushes, but like you could only use the flame like once per time of entering a sector or a point in the map. So you have to try to burn a bush and walk out and come back and try to burn a bush and walk out and come back. And you have to keep doing this. So trying to find the right one to burn is hard. But then also like you have to blow up stuff, right? You have to blow up holes in walls for certain things. And the way to figure out, you know the way to figure out where you got to do that at?
No.
You walk up and you hit it with your sword. If you walk up to a wall and you hit your sword, it's going to make a sound. And then you're going to hear one that goes tink like a different sound, that's the spot you can blow up.
Wow. That sounds
Yeah.
horrible and obnoxious.
Yeah. So having him to help guide me through those parts when I was that age. But like the actual combat, getting through the different levels, getting through the dungeons, all that stuff, I was probably 8 or 9 when I did that.
See, that makes me feel so bad at this game.
Well, but you gotta realize that like our minds, as someone who plays a lot of games, right? Your minds have been controlled to like
See the visual hints. Like in an Ocarina Modern Zelda, there's a crack in a wall that you can blow up. It looks like it's visually a different kind of wall.
And I want to say maybe even inside the dungeons, you have that same thing in the original one. I know you definitely have that in A Link Between Worlds, which was the second one.
Right.
But like
Link Between Worlds, meaning the 3DS.
Oh, sorry. I meant to
sequel to the Link to the Past.
Yeah, I meant to say A Link to the Past and it's not the second one. I realize that, but it's the second one that matters.
We'll get there, John. We'll get there.
God. Yeah, we will, and it'll be a very short conversation. But I don't know. It's a great game, but your mind. Sorry, this is where I was going. Your mind has been set these days to this is how you play games. This is how you do combat. This is how you do these different things, and that's why like my mind was originally trained this way. And don't get me wrong, I'm not good at it going back now, but it's probably why I enjoy going back and playing the old retro games.
Because you have a established idea of what you're going into versus I'm going in and going, this doesn't play the same. This doesn't play the way that I expect games to play. Versus like A Link to the Past plays similarly to how I would expect it to play.
Yes, exactly.
Same reason that the original Super Mario Brothers, without the physics and the ideas that like how the original plays, puts younger people off. Not that it's not the art style, it's not the oldness of it, it's the way it plays.
Yes.
Hi, John.
Yes.
That's what we think of the original Legend of Zelda.
It's a fantastic game.
It's an okay game that has its point in history, but I wouldn't go back to it and say
But you are going to go back to it because at some point
we
are going to do I want to do like I think this is a great idea. At some point I want to do a full playthrough of the game, and we'll do it in pieces and record the whole thing.
I would love to do it, but you'll die being angry at me for every time that I swing the sword at the wrong time and get murdered.
Well, but here's the thing. If we're doing it with the Switch, you can hand the controls over to me.
That is a really good point.
So, like, it gives us the opportunity to, and granted, like, I could end up dying just as much, but it gives us the opportunity to be like, okay, like, I'm going to walk you through this, and then if you
can't do it, I'll take over for you.
Yeah, or I will at least attempt to take over for you.
Guys, John, this is important. You need to give me a percentage grade, but a percentage and a letter grade that are not unnecessarily associated with this game.
Oh,
remember like last time?
Oh no, this game is a 110 out of 10, A plus. This game is fantastic. It's super well built.
I'll give it a real grade. It's like a 45%. It's the equivalent of a C-.
You are insane, my friend.
Guys, forget being cool.
For more great discussions, hit that subscribe button or visit forgetbeingcool.com.
I can always do this multiple times if it's bad. Let me tell you something, Dave. The original Legend of Zelda is the game that holds up the best for those who played it back in the day, but possibly the worst for people who never played it before. And it's still one of my favorites. Let me tell you something, Dave. The Legend of Zelda is too smart for you. Let me tell you something, Dave. You gotta burn the bush down in The Legend of Zelda because it was made back in the 80s where bushes were a thing.